During the Great Depression, survival wasn't about bug-out bags, solar panels or fancy gear. It was about grit, resourcefulness, and the kind of hard-learned tricks that turn scarcity into strength. Families who lost everything still managed to survive in cities where jobs vanished overnight and supplies ran thin. They didn't have the luxury of rural self-sufficiency or high-tech tools, yet they endured by mastering a few simple but powerful survival hacks that today's urban preppers could learn a lot from. And one of those forgotten methods, born out of pure necessity, remains one of the smartest urban survival solutions ever devised. Let's dig into how this Depression-era trick worked, why it's still relevant for anyone living in a city today, and how you can apply it to make your modern life more resilient, independent, and ready for hard times. The Great Depression forced people to turn waste into survival tools. When the economy collapsed in 1929, millions found themselves stranded in cities without jobs, food, or savings. Supermarkets were rare luxuries, and waste was unthinkable. Urban families learned that survival meant learning to see value where others saw trash. That mindset produced 1,000 clever workarounds, but one of the most ingenious was the hobo stove, a compact, fuel-efficient cooker made from discarded tin cans. The hobo stove was born in the shanty towns known as Hoovervilles, where displaced workers and families built entire communities out of salvaged materials. A simple can, a few holes punched in the sides, and a bit of kindling could create a working stove that boiled water, cooked a meal, and provided a little warmth, all without electricity or gas. It wasn't fancy, but it worked anywhere. Back alleys, abandoned lots, rooftops, or the side of a train line. How a tin can stove works, and how you can build one today. The principle behind the hobo stove is simple but brilliant. The can acts as a miniature chimney, concentrating heat and airflow to create intense combustion using minimal fuel. You can make one in less than 15 minutes using a large metal can. Something like a coffee or paint can works best. To recreate this Depression-era tool, start by cutting several air holes around the bottom edge of the can to allow oxygen to feed the fire. Then cut a larger rectangular opening on the side near the bottom. This is your fuel port, where you'll feed in small sticks, twigs, or pieces of scrap wood. Place a few small holes around the top rim as exhaust vents, then set the can on a fireproof surface like bricks or concrete. All right, so place a bit of tinder, like dry paper, bark, or even cotton, inside and light it up. Once the fire catches, you want to feed in some thin sticks and just let the draft pull air through those bottom holes. Within a few minutes, you'll have a focused flame that's capable of boiling water, cooking up some soup, or even sterilizing your tools. It's, compact and efficient, and it'll work in just about any weather, unless you're caught in a real downpour. Back in the 1930s, hobos would carry these stoves in their packs, making them a real lifeline out on the road. And nowadays, the same setup can serve as a reliable backup if the power goes out, gas lines fail, or you just need a discreet way to cook in the city without drawing attention. It produces hardly any smoke if you do it right, burns almost any dry material you can find, and can be built entirely from scavenged parts. The hobo stove wasn't just a tool. It was a philosophy of survival. You see, the true genius of this Depression-era hack isn't just in its function, but in what it represents: adaptability. You know, people back then didn't have access to new materials or specialized equipment, so they reused what was around them. They turned tin cans into cookware, cardboard into insulation, and even old tires into sandals. Quite resourceful, isn't it? Every object had potential value if you looked at it the right way. It's all about perspective, really. That mindset is the real takeaway for urban survival today. In a city, when systems fail, the environment becomes both your challenge and your resource. Trash piles become hardware stores, construction debris becomes shelter, and a single tin can, overlooked by everyone else, can become the tool that keeps you warm, fed, and alive. In modern times, this approach translates to repurposing what you already have. Empty food cans can become stoves or water filters. Glass jars can store fuel or preserve food. Broken umbrellas can be turned into rain catchers. The Depression taught people to see potential everywhere, and that's exactly the skill modern preppers need when supply chains falter or urban stores run empty. You don't need to live through another Great Depression to see the value of these old methods. Urban life makes most people overly dependent on electricity, transport and supply lines. But the smallest disruption, a blackout, a flood, or even a trucker strike, can, leave thousands stranded without essentials. Learning Depression-era self-reliance, well, it really gives you the upper hand. Let's take the hobo stove as an example of how to adapt. If you live in an apartment, you can safely build and test one on a balcony or fireproof surface, just using it in emergencies or outdoor spaces. Keep a small supply of dry sticks, paper or charcoal for fuel, and a metal pot or pan that fits over the can. If the power fails, you'll still be able to cook, purify water, and, maintain warmth. The same principle applies well beyond just cooking. Back in the 1930s, folks got real creative, turning bathtubs into cold storage for their perishables, making soap from animal fat, and even using newspaper as insulation. It's just amazing, really, how resourceful people can be when times get tough. They didn't wait around for help. They engineered their own solutions, plain and simple. The more you practice these small, low-tech survival habits now, the better prepared you'll be when, modern systems let you down. Why this Depression-era hack still matters in a high-tech world. Technology has made us comfortable, but it's also made us, a bit complacent. The people who lived through the Great Depression didn't have the option to rely on convenience. They had to think, adapt, and endure. Their hacks, like the hobo stove, weren't just about making do. They were about mastering self-reliance with the materials at hand. Today's world, for all its advancements, is still vulnerable to the same old problems. economic downturns, infrastructure failures, and resource shortages. It's quite something to think about, really. Knowing how to turn waste into tools, how to cook without fuel, and how to stay warm without power isn't primitive. It's power. It's a kind of wisdom, if you ask me, that we shouldn't underestimate. It's the same knowledge that kept millions alive when everything else fell apart. Quite remarkable, isn't it? A legacy of survival that stands the test of time. The next time you toss away a can, just take a moment to remember the lessons our ancestors learned the hard way. Practice this small act of resilience. Build your own hobo stove, give it a try, and, pass that knowledge on. Because, survival isn't about having the latest gadgets. It's about knowing what to do when all of them fail. If you value forgotten wisdom like this, subscribe to Backyard Wisdom for more real history, practical survival insights, and proven techniques that connect the old world to the challenges of today. And, hey, share this with someone who believes that true preparedness starts not with equipment, but with the knowledge and creativity to turn nothing into something.